For several generations now, it has been a widely held view among serious students of philosophy. The greatest philosopher ever to appear in the West since the ancient Greece is Immanuel Kant. Kant was a German philosopher and was born in the town Königsberg in East Prussia in 1724 and died at the age of almost 80 in 1804. Many jokes have been made of the fact that Kant rarely left his hometown and never went outside his native province in whole of his life. Also about the fact that he sticks so to his daily routine that the people of Königsberg literally set their watches by him passed by their windows. He was married and outwardly his life was entirely uneventful. He was not a total dry stick as my description so far suggests. On the contrary, social, amusing, elegant in dress and witty in conversation, and his lectures in the University of Königsberg, where he was a professor for 30 years, were famous for their brilliance. Nothing of Kant of his youth and early middle age remain widely unknown. All or few of them are virtually unread. His lasting works did not begin till he was 57 and continued to his 70s. So we have rare skeptical, creative genius of first order, producing all his greatest work middle age and old age. Kant's most acknowledged masterpiece is Critique of Pure Reason, which was published in 1781. It wasn't very well understood at first, so 2 years later he published a short exposition of his central argument as a separate book, usually referred to as Prolegomena, Future Metaphysics as a Science, and then brought out an extensively revised edition of Critique of Pure Reason in 1787. Follow a quick succession of his second great critique, the Critique of Practical Reason, in 1788, and of his third critique, Critique of Judgment, in 1790. Meanwhile, he also published in 1785 a book called The Fundamental Principles of the Metaphysics of Ethics, despite the unseductive title. This book has massive influence in moral philosophy ever since.
The problem or the question of ethics is as old as the civilization itself. When men started together and they made communities and the families, and they came out of the cave and developed the civilization and founded culture, they started making the ethics. And in the easiest possible words, ethics is the core conduct which regulates our social life. Social life as well as personal life. There is individual ethics as well. There are certain rules, regulations and norms which according you relate or you conduct your personal life. But most important becomes when you in the groups and communities and when you behave in a social atmosphere when there are other individuals as well. So ethics is the learn which actually tells what is good and how to behave. The concrete we are living in this world and we have to 60, 40, 70 or 80 years, and this life we have to interact with other people, have to live with them, have to behave with them. This is the how we should live a good life, how we should live peacefully with them, how should we coexist with the others, and how we should conduct our behavior with the other people. This is the ethics. This is the ethics which with our concrete life. Matter deals with the abstracts. The ethics deals with the concrete, very instance with our behavior, and those the norms are universal. And historical imperative is that this is the conduct which you may universalize, that it should be done always. There are people who start their dicta with always and never. When they say always and never, they are the people who give the universality of ethical norms. That ethical norms is universal and people who say that no, ethical norms are nothing to do with the humanity. There is no such thing as conscience. This is only the socially approved patterns of behavior, which is that which is approved by the humanity.
Ethics is the philosophical study of moral actions. It is not about judging people per person, but rather looking right and wrong as concepts in themselves, and figuring the best way as to how people should behave. There were two moral theories of the day. Consequentialism divides right and wrong entirely based on the consequences of an action. In other words, the end justifies the means. Deontologism, on the other hand, is of the position that consequences do not matter because moral judgment is contained in the act alone. Kant was a deontologist and was frustrated by the subjectivity of the prevailing moral theory. He proposed an absolute, objective, unbreakable moral law, which he called categorical imperative.
Ethics is the philosophical study of moral problems. In the history of ethics, if we see, we have two strong traditions. One is consequentialism and other is non-consequentialism. Consequentialism, technically speaking, is called teleological ethics, and non-consequentialism is just technically speaking called deontological ethics. The main gist or thesis of teleological ethics is that morality is purely based on consequences and results. For example, it is purely based on consequences. I mean, if we see utilitarianism, the well-known philosopher like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill belong to this tradition. They prefer consequences in all matter. They are of the view that morality is a matter of purely consequences and consequences. They see every moral action from the consequences perspective. And the second thesis that consequences should be good. For example, if you know the main slogan of utilitarianism that greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. If you see, consequentialism basically is a conditional philosophy. It is based on conditional. Kant didn't agree with this kind of tradition. He belonged to deontological tradition. Deontological tradition say that in moral action, consequences are not important. If one thing is important, your motive, your intention. Deontological ethics basically is also known as duty ethics. Kant actually wants to establish moral philosophy on